Good afternoon, Mr. Cedric. My group consisting of Xiangting, Yihui, Josh, and myself will be presenting our CA2 project answers for financial management. Here are the contents that we'll be covering. I'll begin by covering parts A and B of the first question before passing it on to my team members to explain the remaining sections. Starting with 1A, which is to provide an overview of the company. For this project, we have chosen Singapore Airlines, or SIA for short, the national carrier of Singapore, renowned for its service excellence and innovation. Established on 28 January 1972 following the split of Malaysia-Singapore Airlines, SIA has grown into one of the world's leading airlines, consistently recognized for its high standards and customer satisfaction. SIA operates a modern fleet of aircraft, including the Airbus A380 and Boeing 777, focusing on safety, comfort, and technological advancements. The airline serves over 130 destinations in more than 30 countries, connecting Singapore to the world. One of SIA's most iconic symbols is the Singapore Girl, representing Asian hospitality and elegance, a key part of its branding since 1972. Its distinctive golden bird logo was designed by San Francisco-based Landor Associates to reflect SIA's modernity and sophistication. As a premium airline, SIA consistently ranks among the top airlines globally for service excellence, in-flight experience, and operational reliability. It has received numerous awards, including the prestigious World Best Airline title by Skytrax. The Singapore Airlines Group includes Singapore Airlines, Scoot, and the now defunctional Silk Air. Among them, only SIA is a member of the Star Alliance, a global network of 28 airlines that enables co-location of airport terminals, shared communication initiatives, and benefits such as the frequent flyer programs. Financially, SIA has a history of profitability but suffered its first loss in decades during the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite this, through cost-cutting measures, service diversification, and strategic recovery efforts, SIA reported a record profit of $2.67 billion for their financial year end of 31st March 2024, showcasing its resilience and financial strength. SIA's mission is to provide top-quality air transportation services while maximizing returns for shareholders and employees. Its vision is to maintain its loss-free record and position itself for continued growth in a globalized industry. Moving on to Part B, addressing one systematic risk and one unsystematic risk faced by SIA. Firstly, systematic risk refers to risks that impact the entire market, economy, or industry and cannot be eliminated through diversification. A significant example is the COVID-19 pandemic, which spread rapidly across the world, prompting the World Health Organization to declare it a public health emergency of international concern. The aviation industry was hit hard as many countries imposed lockdowns and travel restrictions, drastically reducing the demand for air travel. As a result, SIA reported a net loss of $4.3 billion for the financial year ending 31st March 2021, a trend that affected numerous airlines worldwide. Unsystematic risk, on the other hand, refers to risks that are unique to a specific company or industry. One recent example is the turbulence incident on Singapore Airlines flight SQ321 in May 2024. The flight en route from London to Singapore encountered severe turbulence over Myanmar, causing significant injuries and one fatality. Passengers and unsecured items were thrown around the cabin, leading to head injuries and bleeding ears. A 73-year-old British passenger suffered a suspected heart attack and passed away. The aircraft made an emergency landing at Bangkok Suvarnabhumi Airport, where medical assistance was provided to the injured passengers. Reports indicated that those not wearing seatbelts were more likely to sustain injuries. And with that, I will now hand over the presentation to Xiangting, who will continue with the next section.
Now, moving on to 1C, where we determine the required rate of return for SIA using the CAPM model. To do so, there are three variables we need to find. First is the risk-free rate, known as RF, beta, and the market return, known as RM. After which, we'll substitute the values into this formula. Here's an overview of our findings, which I'll go through in more detail. Firstly, after researching from the MAS website, we found that the risk-free rate for a 10-year government bond yield is 2.9% as of January 27, which was the date we attempted this question. So, why do we use the 10-year rate? We reasoned that it aligns better with the long-term nature of business cash flows. Not only that, we feel that it can reflect stable and long-term economic conditions, and this rate is also widely used in equity valuation models. Secondly, for beta, we found it to be 0.86 from Yahoo. This can mean that SIA historically exhibited slightly lower volatility compared to the overall market, and their stock tends to move less than the market during periods of market fluctuations. Lastly, for market return, it stated 7.93% on the State Street Global Advisors website as shown here. We researched that SIA was one of the top 30 firms in Singapore, and thus is suitable to represent the overall performance of our stock market. We also use the benchmark rate instead as it represents the entire market, unlike the fund rate. It is also more objective and it aligns better with financial models. Taking all these values into consideration, we substituted them into the formula of RF plus RM minus RF times beta to get 7.23% as our rate of return for SIA. Now, moving on to 1D, we need to calculate our share price using the constant growth rate formula. Here, we also need to find three variables. D1, which is next year's expected dividend. R, which is the required rate of return we calculated earlier. And G, which is the constant growth rate. To find the share price, we will take D1 divided by R minus G. Firstly, taken from SIA's annual report for financial year 2324, their current dividend, or known as D0, is 48 cents per share as shown here. Next, the required rate of return will be 7.23% as calculated in question 1C. Lastly, taken from our Reuters article, the growth rate, or Singapore's GDP growth, will be 2.5% as seen here. So, why do we take the midpoint of 2 to 3% instead, and not the lower or upper bound? This is because we feel that it ensures a more balanced approach to our calculations and reflects a reasonable long-term expectation. A balanced figure also aligns with economic growth trends and airline industry stability. With this, we then calculate D1, which is next year's dividend, where we multiply the price of their current dividends with 1 plus the growth rate as shown in this formula to get 49 cents. We then substitute this value into the share value formula of D1 divided by R minus G as mentioned earlier. And with that, we obtain a share price of $10.40.
Thank you, Xiangting. Now moving on to part E on the reasons for difference in calculated share price and actual share price. Based on Yahoo Finance, the actual share price of SIA as of 24th January 2025 is $6.30. And our calculated share price in part D was $10.40. One reason the result in this difference would be the overestimation of growth rates. For example, if the expected dividend growth rate or the projected earnings was set too high, the formula will yield a higher theoretical price. However, in reality, external factors such as fluctuating demand for air travel, rising operational costs, or geopolitical uncertainties could decrease SIA actual growth prospects, leading to a lower market price of $6.30. In addition, another possible reason for that difference would be market sentiment and perceived risk. The constant growth rate formula assumes a stable and predictable growth, which may not align with the real-world market dynamics and investor behavior. The actual price of $6.30 reflects investor sentiment and perceived risk, which these are not accounted for in the constant growth rate formula. Factors such as economic downturns, heightened competition in the airline industry, or concerns over SIA financial stability, such as debt levels or cash flow issues, could push the market price down. Next, question F on the effects of using historical value weights or market value weights on the cost of equity and WACC. The formula for CAPM is as shown. Cost of equity is basically the required rate of return for asset J in this formula. As we can see, there's no part that talks about weights or proportion in this formula. Thus, we can conclude that using historical value weights or market value weights has no effect on cost of equity, as the formula does not use weights. Weighted average cost of capital, also known as WACC, is defined as the cost of various forms of capital multiplied by the corresponding proportion in a firm's capital structure. As we can see, the formula does consist of weights. Thus, we can conclude that using historical value weights or market value weights can affect WACC. Moving on, whether historical value weights or market value weights is more suitable for financial decision. Historical value weights is defined as the value of an asset as entered on the balance sheet or its actual cash value. Market value weights is defined as the value of an asset if it were traded in an auction setting. To break down the formula, WACC is basically weighted cost of debt plus weighted cost of equity. Let's assume that the historical value weight on debt is lower than the market value weight on debt, and the investor uses the historical value weight approach. They will perceive the stock as a lower risk and thus will not fully account for the true level of financial risk. Similarly, if the other way round, where the historical value weight on debt is higher than the market value weight on debt, the investor will perceive the stock as a higher risk and thus will lose out on the returns. Thus, we conclude that using market value weight is more suitable for financial decision as it reflects the current market conditions and thus will provide a more accurate representation of WACC. Now, I'll pass my time to Josh.
Thanks, Yihui. Now, moving on to question 2A, we are required to prepare a cash budget for My Melody Cafe covering the period from March to June 2025. When preparing a cash budget, we begin with the sales forecast, which is a prediction of the sales activity during a given period. Based on the question, the projected sales from March to July 2025 are 40K, 50K, 40K, 80K, and 30K respectively. Next, we have to estimate the monthly cash flows by forecasting sales revenue and expenses that relates to production, overhead, and other expenses. To start off with the cash receipt section, it contains all inflows of cash during a given period, which include 50% cash receipts and 10% discount from sales during the current month, 30% cash receipts a month after sales, and 20% cash receipts 2 months after sale. In addition, the cafe receives government rebates of 10K in March and 12K in June, and finally, royalties and licensing fees of 23K each in both March and June. Based on our calculations, we have obtained a total cash receipt of 87K, 54.5K, 41K, and 93K from March to June respectively. Moving on to the cash disbursement section, it contains all cash outflows by the firm during a given period, which includes, firstly, purchases of materials in any given month based on 60% of projected sales for the following month. The firm pays 100% of the current month's purchases in the same month. Secondly, the cafe incurred rent expense of 20K on March and May and 26K on April and June. Next, fixed salaries of 18K and taxes of 1.2K each month from March to June. Next, miscellaneous operating expenses of 2K, 2.5K, 3K, and 3.5K from March to June respectively. Next, insurance premium amounting to 5.6K and long-term loan repayment of 40K in May. Last but not least, the cafe paid their shareholders dividends amounting to 2K in March and June. Based on our calculations, we have obtained a total cash disbursement of 73.2K, 71.7K, 135.8K, and 68.7K from March to June respectively. Subsequently, we subtract the total cash disbursement from the total cash receipts to arrive at the net cash inflow or outflow and add it to the beginning cash balance. The ending cash balance then shows how much cash the firm will have on hand without seeking additional financing. As the cafe has a minimum cash balance of 70K to always keep on hand, the cash budget then compares the ending cash balance to it. Based on the cash budget, the cafe has an excess cash balance of 23.8K in March and 6.6K in April. The cafe can use this excess cash to invest in marketable securities or other assets. On the other hand, the cafe has a deficit cash balance of 88.2K in May and 63.9K in June. In this case, the cafe will seek additional financing, most likely in the form of short-term borrowing to attain the minimum cash balance of 70K. Last but not least, we should also take note that the ending cash balance of the current month is the beginning cash balance of the following month. Moving on to part 2B, we have to compute the minimum line of credit required by the cafe. It was given that the cafe wants to maintain a monthly minimum cash balance of 70K, with the month of May having an ending cash balance of negative 18.2K. To obtain the minimum line of credit, we have to subtract the ending balance in May from the desired minimum cash balance, which gives us a value of 88.2K. By definition, the minimum line of credit is the smallest amount of borrowing required to cover cash shortfall and to ensure that company can maintain the minimum cash balance throughout the period. The month of May is used in this equation as the biggest cash deficit occurred in May as compared to other months. Several reasons for the cash shortfall are due to lower sales collections, loan repayment, and payment of insurance premium in May, and high purchases made due to high sales forecast in June. And with that, we have come to the end of our presentation. Thank you.